Alrighty, so you're on the second video and you should have Schoology open, and we are currently going to go to question 21, and you'll have your calculator and your notes in front of you. So we're just going to continue where we left off yesterday. I just have up here on the screen right now in front of you, just talking about, we left off on chapter 5. Okay, and we're actually have a couple more questions in chapter 5, so we're doing expressions. So yesterday, the few problems we did in chapter 5 were 17 and 18 with finding the value of the expression, using distributive property, and then simplifying, combining like terms in number 19 and 20. So there's still a couple more. So like I said, we're actually going to be on question 21. So we're going to do the second half here. There is a total of 40 questions. And as long as you keep taking notes with me right now and writing the problems down, and then when you answer the problems, going into Schoology and choosing that correct answer, you get to use the paper copy of your notes on the exam on Tuesday, June 8th. All right. So now at number 21, we're picking up with finding the greatest common factor of the two monomials I give here. And so that was a part of chapter 5. We talked about greatest common factor, and we talked about factoring in chapter 5. So these two monomials, you have 20x and 18y. And when you factor these, you're talking about the numbers that divide in, and then we're going to find the greatest one that they have in common. Now, these have variables, and we talked about that as well. So let's first talk about the numbers, the numbers that divide in, and then we'll talk about the variable piece. So thinking about what divides into 20. Well, 1 does, 2, 4, 5, 10, and 20. And we have to write the variable down. So there's an x there. 18y. So what divides into 18? 1, 2, 3, 6, 9, and 18. And then don't forget, you got to write the variable down. Now, when we did these in class, we talked about the greatest factor, the highest factor that divides into both of these. And when you look between both, it looks like 2 is the greatest common factor between both values. And then with the variables, they're different variables. They don't share a variable. There's nothing in common with them. And so since they're different, there is no variable we put with our greatest common factor. So this one is just 2. So number 21, right? That's now where you should be. You should have all of this written down on your paper as notes. And then number 21 on your screen in Schoology, you should be choosing the answer 2. Okay, next one, number 22. So factor the expression using greatest common factor. So we have 25x plus 45. And so what I'm going to do is the same thing. I'm going to list the factors for both. So we need to think about what divides into 25x. 1, 5, 25, and x. That's it. There's only 4 factors there. 45. 1. I'm trying to remember. No, 2 does not. It's not even number. 2, sorry, it does not. 3. Not 4, but 5 does. 6, 7, 8, 9. And then 15 and 45. And that's it. So now the greatest common factor between both is going to be 5. And so remember now, when we factor, we have to factor the expression. This greatest common factor comes outside the parentheses. So this is working backwards. You're creating a distributive property problem from the factoring. So the 5's in common, the greatest common, comes outside the parentheses here. And now what we do is we fill in what's left. Now, we need 25x here, which means we have to think about, well, what times 5 is going to give us 25x? Well, 5x does, right? So if we do distributive property, 5 times 5 is 25. X is with it, 25x. Plus, what times 5 gives you 45? Well, 5 times 9 does. And so here's the distributive property problem. Again, you can use that to distribute and verify that you get 25x plus 45. And you do. 5 times 5, 25x. 5 times 9, 45. And so when you're looking at your factored answer over here, right here, 5 times 5x plus 9. So that ties up chapter 5. That finishes that chapter for you. Now we're going to look at chapter 6 with equations. Okay, and we're going to start with number 23 with that. And this is going to be a one-step equation to begin with. So this says m plus 5 equals -8. And so I'm going to come over here and work this out. Now we always do the opposite to solve for the variable that we need. And we need m to stand by itself. So we're going to use the subtraction property of equality on both sides to even and equal out this equation for us. And so remember, we're doing the opposite. We're using subtraction, and that was called the subtraction property of equality because 5 minus 5 is 0. And now over here on the right to balance, this is -8 and -5. Two negatives, right? We're going to add together and it stays negative. So -13. This is now gone, right, when it's 0. And I have m on the left-hand side, and I have -13 on the right-hand side. M equals -13. So I see that answer over here. And remember with these, I said you could check your answer, which means you can take your answer that you get and plug it back in, substitute it back into the problem, and verify that's right. So -13 plus 5, yep, opposite signs I subtract, and I take the sign of the higher number. And absolutely, it's -8. It balances on both sides. That's just a way of checking your answer. So m equals -13. Number 24, we have another one-step equation here. So n minus 12 equals 15. And so we're going to use the opposite. This time, since you're starting with subtraction, you're going to use the addition property of equality to balance out on both sides here. So adding 12. -12 and a +12 is 0, right? And that's our goal, to make this go away first. And then to balance on the right of the equal sign, 15 plus 12, we get 27. This is now gone, and n equals 27. If I check my answer on that, I can put 27 in for n, subtract 12 away from it, and if I do, yes, I'm going to get 15. Okay, so it does balance. Okay, so one-step equations there to start with. You should have 23 and 24 answers in Schoology for those, and work written down. And just like yesterday, if you need to pause the video at all to catch up, then make sure you do. Okay, number 25. So also a one-step equation here. Now this is multiplication one step to start with. You have -8n equals -72. And so here, knowing that we're going to get n to stand by itself and solve for n, we want to do the opposite again. So since this is multiplication to start, we use division. So we're going to use that division property of equality on both sides. Divide by -8. And when we do that, -8 divided by -8, well, that's 1, +1, n, which is what we want. And -72 divided by a -8, two negatives when you divide is a positive, +9. So n equals 9. Number 26, this is a two-step equation. So 4x plus 5 equals 13. And so here, we're going to start with the opposite. So since we're adding 5, we're going to subtract 5. So that subtraction property of equality, this is the first step. Positive 5 and that negative 5, there's 0, right? That's what we want. We want to be able to cross that off. And then balancing over on the right here, 13 minus 5, that gives us 8. And remember, there's that second step, right? So you're not done. You have to bring down what's left. So 4x we still have. And on the right side, we have 8. And now we're going to finish this out by solving for x. And so this is a multiplication one step. To do the opposite, we're going to divide by 4. So division property of equality here. 4 divided by 4 is 1x. 8 divided by 4 is 2. X equals 2. And you can check these answers always, right? Substitute that back into the problem. So if I do, this is saying 4 times my answer of 2 for x plus 5, that equals 13. Well, 4 times 2 is 8. 8 plus 5, does that give me 13? And yes, it does. It balances on both sides. So I've done and solved the equation correctly. Okay, chapter 7, geometric figures. So when we did chapter 7, we are looking at angles and triangles. So question number 27 here says, refer to the diagram shown here. Identify angle pair 2 and 5. So when I look here at my diagram, I see 2. I see 5 directly across from that. And when we talked about angles, these that are directly across from each other were called vertical. They look like V's, right? Sorry, that was one of my hints that I had given you when we did that chapter. It looks like a V directly across. They're vertical, and they're the exact same angle measurement as well. So vertical for number 27. 28. What is the missing angle measure? Well, I just hinted at that on number 27, the one you just did. If you look at the way that these are labeled for you right now, these angles, this 92 degrees here, directly opposite of that is also vertical. So I just said those are congruent. They're the same. They're equal to each other. So that missing angle measure is also 92 degrees. Right? You got that V to indicate vertical there, directly opposite, 92. 29. Find the value of y. So if you remember here, when we talked about triangles, we know there's 3 angles in that triangle. We know that triangles equal 180 degrees all together inside. So when we look at what we have currently in this triangle, we have a 52-degree acute angle up top. Remember that marking of that square in the corner is 90 degrees. And then we have a missing angle y here that we need to find. So when we did these in class, we took what we knew, so the 52 degrees, the 90 degrees, and we added those together to see how much we had so far with degrees inside that triangle. So if you add 52 and you add 90, so far in that triangle you have 142 degrees. Okay, we need 180. So then the next thing you're doing is subtracting away what you have from 180. So 142 minus 180. And see what's left. So when you do this, you should understand, right, that this angle down here that's missing, that's an acute angle, which means you should have an angle degree measurement of less than 90 degrees. So when you look at your answer choices, there's no way it could be 142 degrees or 180 degrees, right? that's not an obtuse angle, that's acute. So you're narrowing it down. You have these two left. And so when you subtract away, you have a 38-degree angle that's missing in that bottom right corner. And so 38 degrees is your missing y. All three added together would give you 180. Okay, let's look at question number 30. And again, make sure you're going into Schoology and answering in Schoology as well. Number 30, find the scale factor. So we talked about scale factor in chapter 7, and we talked about growing in size with shapes and also shrinking in size with shapes. Now, this top triangle is your smaller scaled down version, and the larger triangle is your enlarged version here. And this is scaled up. So we're going from the small to the large, and what we do is we match corresponding sides to see what's going on. So the 4 matches with the 16, the 5 here matches with the 20, and the 6 comes over here and matches with 24. It's like imagining taking that smaller triangle and laying it right on top of the larger one and matching sides. So I need to know the scale factor. Well, if we're going from small to big, it's growing in size. So from 4 to 16, that's getting 4 times bigger, right? 4 times 4 is 16. From 5 to 20, this is also 4 times bigger. And 6 to 24 is also 4 times bigger. So these are similar figures when you have a scale factor that is the same all the way around. And these similar figures have a scale factor of 4. Okay, 31. So now we're going to start going into chapter 8. And in chapter 8, we did circles, area, and circumference. And we also talked about volume of prisms. So let's take a look at number 31. What is the circumference of the following circle? Use 3.14 for pi and round to the nearest tenth if necessary. So let's write down that formula for circumference. Circumference equals pi times diameter. Remember, we talked about cherry pie delicious or cherry pie disgusting, whichever way you wanted to remember it, pi times diameter. And we're going to use that 3.14 like the directions tell you, and we're going to multiply it by the diameter on that circle. So look at the circle. Remember, circumference is the distance around, so we're finding the distance around this circle. And currently, you have a radius there of 20 inches. Well, I can't take the radius of 20 inches and put it in my problem because remember, I need the diameter here. So when we talked about this, right, imagine extending that out all the way. And if you do and create that diameter, this is also 20 inches. And so all together, that diameter from one end of the circle to the other is 40 inches. So the diameter, 3.14 times 40. Let's find that circumference. So make sure you're using 3.14 and not the pi key. I'm trying to have it rounded for you and make it a little simpler as far as the answers go. So your distance around that circle is 125.6 inches. Done, right there. 125.6. Okay, let's take a look at an area problem. So we're going to go now to number 32. And you have an airplane that circles an area above an airport with a radius of 10 miles. So right now what I'm going to do is draw a circle. And I'm going to show in that circle a radius of 10 miles, just like that. And so then it says before it's allowed to land safely, okay? So it's circling above, waiting to land. Find the area of the airplane while it waits for clearance to land. And so use 3.14 for pi, round to the nearest tenth again if necessary. So the area inside that circle. Let's write down that formula. Pi r squared. Apple pies are 2. Cherry pie is delicious. Apple pies are 2. Area equals pi times the radius squared. So here, right, 3.14 times the radius, we have it this time. So that 10 miles, 10 squared. And thinking about order of operations, remember you have to do exponents first. So 10 times 10, this is 100 here. You're going to multiply that by 3.14. And so when you do, understanding you're multiplying by 100, that decimal moves over 2 places to the right. You should have 314 miles squared. Square miles with area. Okay, number 33, find the volume of this rectangular prism here. So we did volume of rectangular and triangular. So volume here was length times width times height. So take a look at what's labeled here. 3 meters, 5 meters, 7 meters. So 7 times 5 times 3. Right? We're just multiplying those 3 values together. And if you do, you have 105. Now volume is cubic, meters cubed. 3-dimensional, cubic meters, 105. Okay. Again, you should have answers through 33 in Schoology. Again, pause if you need to at any point to catch up. Number 34. Find the volume of this triangular prism, round to the nearest tenth if necessary. So here, remember we talked about, since it's triangular, okay, you have to take half. So really what's happening here is you're still doing length times width times height, because you'll see that labeled on the prism. But again, because it's a triangle, you need to take half of that amount, half of it. So knowing that, we're going to take 1/2 times, let's start filling this in. The length, 18, the width, 12, the height, 9. So you can do this in any order you want to because it's multiplication, so it doesn't matter how you work this problem out, to be honest. You can, in your calculator, for 1/2, type in 0.5 times, and then just continue, 18 times 12, oops, not divided, times 9. 1/2 times 18 times 12 times 9. And you will have a volume inside that triangular prism of 972 cubic centimeters. Okay, rolling into chapter 9, probability. Rolling a number cube and getting a number less than 1 is impossible. Less than 1. Right? So at 0, here's 1. And remember, this was 1/2. Less than 1 is impossible. So remember, this was certain. This was impossible. This was likely. And this was unlikely. Whoops, you can't see that. Sorry about that. Let me switch that over. Okay, so we talked about probability in class. That's the number line that we referred to. Okay, so on a number cube, you have 6 numbers. Getting a number less than 1 is impossible. That's true. You can't get a number less than 1 on a number cube. So rolling that number cube and getting a number less than 1 is impossible. That's a true statement. Okay, number 36. What is the theoretical probability that rolling a number cube and getting a number greater than 4? Rolling a number cube and getting a number greater than 4. So you know there's 6 possible numbers on the number cube. Greater than 4. It does not include 4. That includes 5 and 6. There's 2 numbers greater than 4. So 2 out of 6. If you reduce it, that's 1/3. And if you divide that out, if you're not sure what 1/3 is as a percent, it's 33%. So you have a 33% chance of getting a number greater than 4 on a number cube. Question 37. John has a bag of marbles. There are 4 red, 6 green, 5 white, and 5 black. What is the probability that John does not choose green? So let's find out how many total you have. 4 plus 6 is 10. 10 plus 5 is 15, and another 5 is 20. You have 20 marbles there. And there are 6 green. So if there are 6 green, remember, doesn't choose green. So green's not included. So 6 take away from 20. That gives you 14 other marble colors that you can choose from. So that means 14 out of 20. You can divide that fraction out. That would give you a 70% chance, 70%, that he does not choose a green marble. 38. Using the counting principle, find the total number of outcomes for the following situation. At a banquet, guests were given a choice of 3 entrees, 4 veggies, soup or salad. That's 2 choices there. 3 beverages and 1 dessert. Remember, counting principle is multiplication. So you're taking the amount of outcomes for each one and you're going to multiply those together. Be careful with the soup or salad. Again, that's 2 choices there. So 3 times 4, 12. 12 times 2, 24. 24 times 3, 72. And 72 times 1 is 72. So you can type that in just like that. And you're going to have 72 outcomes possible given that situation. 72 different combinations, right? Of an entree, a veggie, a soup or salad, a beverage, and a dessert. 39, okay, statistics. So we just took a quick check on this the other day. So a sample group of people at a mall were surveyed and asked which of the 3 ways would they prefer to travel. The results were listed in the frequency table. How many people out of 500 would you expect to say they prefer to travel by plane? So here's the original sample. 35, 45, and 20. 35 people like to travel by car, 45 by plane, 20 by bus. So we need to, in step 1, find the amount of the sample. We'll add these together. 35 plus 45 plus 20. Add your sample. Figure that out. There's 100 people that were talked to. So your sample is 100. That's your original survey. Now, expect to travel by plane. So we're looking at this number right here. So if we're going to predict, like it's asking us to, remember this is a proportion. So the original sample, 45 people out of 100 said that they would travel by plane. We need to understand or predict if there were 500 people, you're extending the population out, how many out of 500 are going to travel by plane? So you could solve this with the butterfly method, which is what we did in chapter 2 when we were reviewing. Or you can look to see how much bigger is this getting? From 100 to 500, you're getting 5 times bigger here. So to make this equivalent, you can also, in the numerator, multiply by 5. And so if you do 45 times 5, you have 225 people that you can anticipate or predict are going to travel by plane. Last question, number 40. Find the mean, median, mode, and range of the following set of data. So our answers are in this order. You're going to find the mean first, the average. So remember, this is adding them up and dividing by how many numbers? You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 numbers here. And now you're going to add those 9 numbers together. So let's do that. 13 plus 18. Sorry, you can't see that. There we go. Plus 13 plus 14. 13 again. 16, 14, 21. And 13. So 135. And then you're going to divide that by 9. So the average number, the average in this set of data is 15. Next, the median, the middle number. Remember, ordered least to greatest. So if I order this least to greatest, I see that I have 1, 2, 3, 4 13s I'm going to write down. And then I have 2 14s. And then next I have a 16, an 18, and a 21. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Just double checking. So now my middle number, there's 9, so there's only going to be 1 in the middle. And my 1 in the middle is 14. So my median is 14. Mode, most frequent. So for my mode here, the most frequent number I see repeating itself is 13. And then lastly, the range. Remember, high minus low. And so the highest number in my data is 21. And my lowest is 13. And when I subtract that, I get a range of 8. So my answers, 15, 14, 13, 8 in that order, just like that. Okay, we're all set with your practice test. That's the last question. So you should double check and make sure all 40 of your questions on the practice test have been answered. Review your answers. Submit it when you're ready for an assignment grade. Make sure you submit it today. Please submit it for an assignment grade. And then on Monday, what we'll do is actually one last review together, something different. And then you'll take the exam on Tuesday. So have a great weekend. The weather is supposed to be fantastic. It's supposed to be in the 80s. And so enjoy it. And we'll meet you back here on Monday with one more review before that last exam. Have a great weekend.